Hi, Naivedya. Thank you so much for joining us on Blitz Business. It's a pleasure to have you.
No, it's a pleasure to be here, Ashish. Thank you for having me on.
Awesome. Let's get started. Tell us a little bit about yourself first, and then we'll talk about business.
Okay. So my life story is that I was born, brought up in Mumbai, and super passionate about cricket as a child, as everyone. So my two favorite sports were cricket and tennis. And then I went to boarding school in Singapore in grade nine. That was a very, very different experience. And it was a very big learning experience because I went from a school where, we were 30 students in a batch to a school where there were 300 students in my year,
Oh,
right? So that was a very huge jump, in terms of, my exposure, what I was doing, the kind of people that I was interacting with. So that was a step up change for me. Then, that really opened me up, I think, as a person. I was, more introverted, a little bit of a shy kid, and really, going out there and, living with people from different cultures really opened me up as a person and really helped me develop into, the kind of person that I am today. And then I went to the US for college, spent 4 years in the US. That again, very, very different experience living in a more unstructured environment because, Singapore, even though was, away was also boarding school, you have more rules. A little bit of a framework, teachers around all the time, even in the boarding house. Whereas, college is a completely unstructured environment. You're left on your own to sort of fend for yourself a little bit, for the first time. So that was again a different experience, and I think learned a lot there. Then I came back to India very keen, always been bullish on the India story. That's always been a passion of mine. And I came back and spent some time working with JP Morgan with their India economist. So under Sajid, we did a lot of macroeconomic research, and all of that. And then after my MBA is where I decided to found Runaya.
okay.
And in terms of my passion, I'll enjoy paddle, like everyone getting into either paddle or pickle these days. I've been playing for about a year now, so not the pioneers of paddle, but still relatively early, and really enjoy playing about 3 days a week.
That's a very diverse and exciting experience, right? So what was the initial idea in terms of you want to do this particular piece, you want to start this business? Like, is there some story towards it, why you started, or you were just trying?
No, so there's no real story. So we actually thought about it. It was a very clear focus area. So, the question that we posed ourselves is that as India scales from, say, at that time in 2016, 2017, we were about a $2 trillion economy, now going to a $7 trillion economy by 2030. What are the shifts and what are the areas that are going to enable this transition? And the other thing that we were clear of was that we wanted to do something in manufacturing, you know, because something that is an industry which I understand. So wanted to do something in the manufacturing space and within industries that may or may not be there in a large scale in India today, but have the potential to grow into large areas. And based on that, the two themes on which we are building Runaya sort of came up. One was sustainability. Even within sustainability, we said let's focus more on industrial sustainability because we realized that there were a lot of people focusing on water, plastic, municipal waste, all of the post-consumer stuff, and really very few people building on industrial waste. So that is an area which we decided to focus on. And then on the other side, we said, the Modi government has a vision to really focus on backward integration. And so we said technology-enabled manufacturing will really allow us to have this push, and be a part of that story. So actually, before we got disconnected,
Awesome.
I was talking a little bit about, our how we came up with the two themes for Uraya. And
Hmm.
we realized that on the sustainability side, going forward, there would be a huge opportunity on industrial sustainability because there are a lot of people already working on post-consumer waste, whether it's water, plastic, municipal waste, etc. But very few people really focusing on post-consumer waste. on industrial waste. So we said let's use that as our focus area. And then for our second, vertical that we have, which is technology-driven manufacturing, we really believe that technology in the manufacturing side would play a huge role in India's development going forward because the Modi government, is very clear that they don't want to become like China, the assembly capital of the world, where 90-95% of the value is created out of the country. The import material come in and the assembly is happening in China. They want a lot of the value to be created in-house within the country. And this would only lead to more and more backward integration and moving lower down in the value chain. And this opens up a lot of opportunities for import substitution, bringing in the right partners to India who, currently don't, global companies that don't operate in India. It gives us the right opportunity to bring them in.
Sure. So currently, where all you guys are operating as of now? Like, where's the company headquartered and which all cities you're in?
Yeah, so, being in manufacturing, we don't have the luxury to be based, our operations to be based out of Bombay, Delhi, Bangalore, etc. So we have one manufacturing setup in Jharsuguda in Orissa. We have a location in Chhattisgarh near Raipur in a city called Korba. We have one manufacturing plant in Silvassa and two locations in Rajasthan. One is in a town called Bhilwara and one is in a town called Chanderia.
Oh, wow. So So how did you pick up these locations? Are there were incentives, or how did the plan go about? Because I think that's also a big concern for other manufacturing companies.
Sure. So for us, because of our business model, especially on the sustainability side, the locations that we picked for our businesses were more based on where our source material would be. So purely basis raw material availability. And our business model is different from other people working in industrial sustainability in that, while people try and have centralized locations, collect their supply chain from multiple sources. We work with individual factories and approach specific companies, target especially their waste, and set up individual processing capabilities for each factory. And this allows us to be a lot more efficient in our production and also eliminates, a lot of the supply chain risk because, we're making an investment for the company, so we have it backed by long-term contracts. So that helps us eliminate, some of the risk there as well. So, not really able to choose our location. One of the businesses we chose Silvassa. And the reason we chose Silvassa especially for our FRP business, which is the fiber reinforced plastic rod, is that it's used primarily in the telecom industry. So it's the backbone of your fiber optic cable. And there are a lot of cable manufacturers in and around the Silvassa area. Plus, being close to the port, it provided us an opportunity for export.
So what is the biggest risk you mentioned about in terms of as a company? What are the biggest risks, top three risks you sort of deal with?
So for us, I think, honestly, it depends on the business. So for our sustainability business, the biggest risk that we have is around operations and operating our machines at full capacity. Because, the whole idea is to run each machine at full capacity and build in your efficiencies. Whereas you come to our FRP business, the big risk there is more around, marketing, technical marketing, getting your product approved by the supplier, by your customers, etc. Because, each cable manufacturer has multiple different SKUs. Each SKUs have a different raw material that goes in, different FRP rod that goes in, and they all need to be qualified by the cable manufacturers and customer. So the sort of certification, qualification process is a bit, it's longer, right, than, say in a commodity. So that's probably the biggest risk for us on that side.
So now moving forward, so what are your expansion plans? You want to add more manufacturing setup or expand into different verticals, tap into adjacencies?
So currently we have expansion plans across our existing portfolio. Whether it's growing existing competencies or going into adjacent products from our JV partners, etc., whatever it may be. But we have very active brownfield expansion plans across our portfolio. On the FRP side, we're planning to double our capacity in the next 2 years. In our JV on ground support solutions, which we have with an American company called Minova. We're in the process of adding new product lines that service the that service the infrastructure industry. Right? So currently we focused a little bit more on the mining side there, but now actively focusing on the infrastructure side. So, adding in more products there. And on our recycling side, I think the growth is coming from adding more customers. We have 50% market share in India today, looking to be at 100% market share in the next 2 years. Then going ahead, zinc. On the zinc recycling side, we are currently tackling smelter waste. Going forward, the idea is to look at mining waste and mine tailings as well.
And then how are you sort of expanding? Are you financing through your books or you're raising capital?
So as of now, we are 100% privately owned, no external capital. All of our growth projects, by and large, we take debt of about 70% on our projects, and 30% is equity. The initial little bit of equity came from our family office, but for the last 2 or 3 years as well, all of our projects have been funded through internal accruals, and going ahead will be funded through internal accruals as well. There's no sort of urgent need to raise any funding.
You guys don't like
We
VCs?
sorry.
You guys don't like VCs, venture capital money?
No, so very honestly, now the kind of scale where it's more PE than VC. But that being said, what we found was that most Ps today, especially the large ones who you would want on your cap table, are looking for fairly large equity stakes. They don't want to come in for a 10% or 15%. They want, 40, 51% as well. And, we're like, we don't need the capital. So why should we dilute such large equity stakes just to get someone on a cap table? It wasn't making any sense.
So then you plan to have an IPO of sorts because he is also now out of the picture.
So again, we don't need the capital. That being said, we run our company, on the governance side, on the finance side. From day one, we've run it as a quasi-public company. We've had a big four, like KPMG has been doing our finance, accounting, MIS, tax compliance has all been outsourced to KPMG. We've had another big four as our internal auditor, Sridhar Santanam as our stat auditor. All our accounts are every year anyway converted to Ind AS. So we've almost run ourselves like a quasi-public company, from day one, should the need arise. Because, growing up in an environment where you are able to have the luxury of creating a business from scratch, when there's so much information out there, so many partners out there that you can work with, we really felt strongly that it was important to get our governance and our values right from the beginning because you don't want to be in a situation where you're looking to raise funding, markets are hot, and then the banks tell you, sorry, it'll take me 15 months to do it because you don't have this in place, you don't have that in place, you need to get this in order. Like we have the luxury of creating things from scratch. Let's run it the right way right from the beginning.
This is such an interesting problem to have. I don't need money. We have recorded 200 episodes. You may be second or the third guy who just says, I don't need money. So let me ask something else. How do you make such businesses which does not need money? I think that's a more important question. How does someone, because we have so many budding entrepreneurs, and
Yeah.
this is a statement itself, I don't need money. So how does someone go about having such kind of business?
So, I think it's very clear that our business is a service business. It's not a transactional relationship with our customers. We add value to them. So I'll give you, one example, right? Or two, I'll give you two examples, one on the sustainability side and one on the manufacturing side, right? On our sustainability driven manufacturing, we process an aluminum waste that is called aluminum dross. And this dross um, is essentially 1% aluminum, which is currently either being sold as scrap by the smelter or it is being landfilled. We recover that aluminum and give it back to the smelter. So it is a direct 1% addition to their bottom line, not just to their top line, right? That is the kind of service that we are providing them.
So, just to understand more, so 1% is aluminum. Sorry, what is the product?
So the waste product is aluminum dross,
What's
which
that?
is about 1.5 to 2% of primary aluminum production. And the way to understand is in the aluminum process to get the ingot, to get the aluminum brick, so to speak, you have to cast it in the cast house. And in the cast house, imagine the molten aluminum as a cup of tea. The top layer of this molten aluminum oxidizes because of being in contact with air, exactly how a layer of malai forms on the top of your cup of tea.
Sure.
And before drinking the tea or casting the aluminum, you have to skim off that oxidized layer on top. Otherwise, the aluminum doesn't reach the requisite purity. So that is that material that we process. And of course, when skimming, you will obviously not just get the material that you don't need. There will be some drops of tea, some drops of aluminum in there that you need to recover. So our process recovers this for the smelters. And out of that 1.5 to 2%, 50% is actually aluminum, which we recover and give back. So it's like, an entirely 1% addition to the bottom line.
And when you say these dross, what is this dross? Aluminium dross, like what is a dross?
So this is that layer on top
That's called the dross.
that's called the aluminum dross, that layer that oxidizes on top.
So basically, you're taking products from the smelters, whatever they give you, you're
That's waste.
it's
That's
waste.
currently waste that is landfilled or sold as scrap. We take that, recover the aluminum that's in there. It goes back to the smelter, right? So that is the service that we are providing them, where they directly have a 1% addition to their bottom line, right?
And what? How does I know a little bit about commodity markets. Aluminum prices fluctuate quite a lot.
So it's back to back, right? We don't pay for this raw material. We get it, we process it, and we give it back to them. So that way we don't have any price exposure or any LME volatility, any of that exposure.
So these are fixed term size contract. You will process X
This is a
amount of.
5-year contract. We will process X amount of dross, and our operating model is that we are paid per ton of dross processed.
So in terms of, so what are the rates for? I assume aluminum will be much higher than other.
So this depends. So aluminum, we don't even track the LME, right? Because for us, it's not relevant. We are just looking at our processing fee. And then the balance 50% that's left, right? So 50% of that dross is aluminum. And the balance 50% that's left, we send to, we have a plant where we process that, and that is converted into briquettes that are used by the steel industry. So what was the 1.5, what is the 2% waste is now becoming zero waste. Right. So that is the service we are providing because of that, we are able to generate sustainable revenues, right? Because we are adding value to our customer. It's not a transactional relationship. Coming to, for example, our JV that we have with Minova, right? When we, approach an L&T or a, mining company or any other EPC company, right? When they're bidding on a project, we don't tell them that, I want to supply you XYZ product. We're like, we will bring our experts, come with you to the site, look at the geology, decide the kind of ground support solution that is best applicable, for this.
Hmm.
And this is how our products save you time, and this is how our products save you money.
Understood.
Because we are adding that service element to it, our margins actually go up.
So how complex is this process in terms of, like you said, you have a 50% market share. So if someone one fine day decide to compete with you guys, set up more scale, everything. So how do you compete again? So that's what I'm trying to understand, your moat, defensibility.
So our moat is very clearly our technology, right?
Okay.
Across our businesses. And even here, we have a very different approach to incubation of technology than I would think most other startups today. For us, it's important to be cash flow positive right from the beginning. Whereas a lot of startups today are like, let me come up with a product, I'll think about cash flow later.
Yeah.
Right? For us, it's always been very important. There's a very strong statement that I am making, and people might hate me for it. But, we clearly believe that you need to be rich to earn the right to innovate. Poor people can't innovate. You need to, stick to the basics and do what makes sense. So the business model that we followed across the board is to either license the best technology in the world or to bring the best JV partner in the world on board with us.
So for this particular technology, are you licensing
So
from?
for Dross, we've licensed the technology. It's from a German entrepreneur. He spent 15 years geeking out over Dross. Typical technocrat, doesn't know how to build a management team, doesn't understand how to scale a product, sell it to other customers, etc. So we became his partners in India. But then a very interesting thing happened. We bought a machine from him that was capable of processing 150 tons of dross per machine per month. We now operate that same machine at almost 500 tons per machine per month, right? So we did our own debottlenecking, process efficiencies, really removed, all the obstacles in the way of that machine actually performing at its full capacity. So now even our, technology, original technology partner is reliant on us when he goes global because no one wants his old machine anymore. They want the IP that we have, that we filed on top of his IP.
ये तो reverse हो गया in terms. So how did you find this German gem?
So again, we went about it very differently. When we first identified the two white spaces that I was talking about, this sustainability and the technology-driven manufacturing, we then said that, look, we might not be the most qualified people to really judge, what the white spaces are. So let's go and appoint, some experts in this space. So at different points in time, we appointed KPMG, Deloitte, Accenture, PwC, and their consulting teams and gave them a bunch of filters, CapEx filter, a return filter, of course, but a lot of qualitative filters. Like we wanted B2B, we wanted technology to be a moat, we wanted an ability to be a major player globally in that industry within, 8 to 10 years. Right, we don't want to remain a marginal player in any industry. So a lot of the industries that we operate in are not large 30, 40, $50 billion industries. So they are $5 billion, $6 billion, $3 billion in some cases. But our technology partners and our JV partners have 30%, 40% market share. The best brand name within that industry, right? That is what we focus on more rather than being a much smaller player in a much larger industry, which again is very contrarian belief to a lot of other people thinking.
So how is this particular recycling space? So I got a couple of companies, they are into not draws, but other sets of recycling. So which is the most profitable aspect within this if you can help us break down this recycling space, waste management space, for example, like what are those top two, three areas where someone is listening, they can try their hands out, or they know based on all your learnings, understanding till now, these are the spaces you should try first.
So, of course, the big recycling space that's opening up for everyone is everything to do with EVs and,
Please.
e-waste recycling, battery recycling, etc. And earlier, for us also, we were very clear when looking at industrial waste that the reason we didn't want to look at post-consumer waste, of course, because a lot of people are looking at it, etc. But also, we didn't want to get into industry where my core competence was supply chain management because that is not something that we understand, right? For us, it was very clear that my supply chain needs to be easy. I need a constant source of raw material. I'm happy to work with one single customer if required and set up dedicated capacity. But my core competence is running a plant at full efficiency, right? We were very clear on that, which is why we picked this particular business model, right? But there are other business models, as you said. And I believe that, as the country grows, the supply chain will definitely become more organized. So there is an opportunity even here for maybe even a software play, right? If someone wants to work on an app that can help integrate or collect plants to raw material sources on the battery value side, etc. And what we're finding very interesting is, the JSW model that they followed at MG, wherein some of their EVs, they provide battery as a service, right?
Yes.
Where MG owns the battery and then, so it eliminates a fear in the mind of the consumer, how long will my battery last? And what it also does very brilliantly is eliminates all collection issues for battery recycling because the OEM owns the battery, right?
Yeah.
So if this model catches on and say you have Tata, BMW, Mercedes going the same way, Tomorrow, if I want to set up a plant to do battery recycling, I can even have a long-term contract with any of the OEMs and say, I will process just your batteries. And there's enough scope, in that itself, right? So let's see how this, business model develops. Because collection has historically been the biggest issue with recycling. And there are companies now, out to try and solve this problem. But that also means there are opportunities in this space as well.
But from consumer perspective, isn't it battery as a service is more expensive? Because anything you rent will be like the
Yes.
fundamental thesis. I'm just picking from that front, right? So from company perspective, from you guys' perspective, for sure. But from a consumer perspective,
No, from a consumer perspective, it makes a lot of sense, right? Because the reason EV adoption is not high today is because people have fear around the battery. And that is a big reason that consumer adoption has not come. That how long will my battery last? Is it safe? Is it efficient? So today, if I have a problem with my EV battery and it's on service, it's up to the OEM to provide me with a replacement, right? It's not my job to replace the battery. And the battery is also usually so expensive that it's often 30 to 40% of the cost of the car. If you're able to reduce that upfront cost by that much, people are happy to pay an annuity for longer versus having to pay such a high upfront cost. And this will also lead to increased adoption in EVs.
yeah, that's true. That's true. You mentioned BMW. I read somewhere in terms of BMW in Germany, they were offering another kind of service if you want to turn your seats to be hot. You pay for.
Yes.
What's that all about? It just came to my mind. That's that's too much, right? There, I
Yeah,
don't
yeah.
see any sense.
Pushing. Yeah, that's pushing it, I think.
Yeah, that's pushing. Yeah, because I like need like next day they will be like if you want to take a left indicator, you pay me for so
Yeah.
like for a ride it's $2, €2 or something. I don't know.
Yeah,
Maybe convert entire car into a service.
yeah.
For €10 you get a entire car BMW. But that's interesting. But in terms of as a service, and what do you think about this? So we got a very large finance company in this space. I think a couple of weeks back. So they are financing EV cars, etc., etc. So what do you think about this two-wheeler space in terms of where there is lot of competition coming up,
Yeah.
things getting on fire, literally? So yeah,
No, I think the EV market is only going to grow. Even at Runaya, we're always looking at opportunities on the battery side. Whether we want to do battery chemicals, battery materials, battery recycling is actually something that we are looking at as well. Bringing in some global technologies and coming in that space. So really actively looking at the EV value chain to see what we can do there. And it's only going to grow from here. Right, the lithium ion battery is only going to grow. And so that provides a lot of opportunity, right? Because if you look at, the individual components even of these batteries, there is a lot of scope for import substitution in a lot of these materials, right? Where significant portion of these batteries are, currently imported. And then you have companies like Reliance, Amara Raja, and all of that who are setting up capacities to make batteries. There is a very good opportunity here to be a part of the EV supply chain without actually getting into EVs, right? There are multiple ways to participate in the supply chain. You don't necessarily have to go to the end product. You can even, backward, go as low down the value chain as you want to try and build that entire localized ecosystem.
and what has been stopping Indian cores from setting up or building battery manufacturing? Because that's one of the biggest cost drivers. You're importing everything.
It's very expensive.
Give us give us an idea. Like what is very expensive? Like what are we looking at?
No, what I understand that to do battery manufacturing at scale, like at a scale that makes sense to operate, it's over a billion, few hundred million to $1 billion.
Wow,
Right? So there are only very few companies in the country who can take up such projects, right? It's not a project, you can start with a $250 million investment, $300 million investment. You can do a decent sized plant, but even that is not most companies' cup of tea, right? It's not a cheap or a low capex project, right? So one is that, and two is technology, right? It's not an open source technology that everyone can do. There are intricacies around it. You need to build that expertise, within the country. So that is also, not a long run process, but that takes time.
that takes time. That's true. That's true. I think this and semiconductor both are needed, and I think India
Yeah.
is moving in that direction of
Yeah.
setting up something. That's true. That's true. No, that's awesome. That's awesome. So then, any learning, Navidya, from to wrap this up? Any learning from your past? If you were given an opportunity to go back in time, anything you would have done differently?
Anything I would have done differently? Oof, that's a good one. If you ask me what I would do again, there are a lot of things.
No, no, not again.
But
Differently.
what I would do differently, I think what I would definitely do differently is accelerate our partnerships with global companies and sort of do that much quicker. So we started off by licensing technology and all of that, which is relatively easier. Then we moved into JVs. I would have pushed a lot more joint ventures ahead much quicker because that I believe has been our secret sauce to growth. We have one JV operational, we have another one that we've announced, and we're actually in the process of working on three or four different JVs as well for new products. So I think that has been our superpower and our secret to success is bringing in the right partners to India and really being a part of, the India strategy of a global company.
That's a very refreshing take. Faster partnerships, JV. Awesome, awesome, awesome. Well, thanks a ton, Navitya, for your time. It was such a pleasure. It's such an interesting business to be in for
Thank you.
sure. Yeah,
Yes.
and we wish you
Thanks,
all the
Ashish.
best.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Ashish.